The following program is paid for by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Pinnacle Capital Mortgage Corporation. Absolute Mortgage Company, NMLS number 81395 and Washington CL number 81395 is an equal opportunity housing lender. Tina Mitchell, MLO number 145420, is a licensed loan originator with Absolute Mortgage. Visit AbsoluteLoans.com or call 888-90-HOMES for cost information. You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell. Sponsored by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Pinnacle Capital Mortgage Corporation. Now, in the studio, local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome to Money Hour on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, May 31st show. I'm your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell. Thank you for taking time to talk money. I provide the news on everything money, fresh information, market trends, and conditions in our local economy. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast, but we are here to answer any questions or connect you with any of my guests that I have in studio today. Please take down this number. The show number is 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150, or you can reach me online at themoneyhour.com. And the lineup for my guest in studio today, Paul Fennell and Daniel Renne with Flux Real Estate. They're one of my trusted sources for our local real estate market and advice for our buyers and sellers. Those of you that are listening that are looking to get into the real estate market, definitely you'll want to hear their segment. Also in studio, Aaron Peterson with Windermere Real Estate, here to discuss the importance of knowing your market and your property when writing and reviewing an offer. And last in studio, Scott Estes with Veristone Capital. Don't expect to go to a traditional bank to get cash to buy at auction, because it won't happen. You need to have private lending money that offers short-term financing, and it's a great way to take advantage of today's real estate opportunities. Again, great information and great guest in studio. For more information on any of the topics discussed, please call into the show, 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150. And let's start out with a little money chat.
Money.
There it is. Little money sign for a little money chat. What I thought I'd share with you today, those of you that are first-time listeners to the show, I am a mortgage expert for my full-time career. I just hang out here on the weekends to do radio and talk mortgages and bring in experts in studio. But what I wanted to break down for you today is the difference between coming in with additional cash for down payment versus coming in with additional cash to buy down your interest rate. So if you've got options, most importantly is to look at all of the options that are available for you when you've got funds to work with to make sure you're making the best financial decision. Now, there's not a right strategy. You have to ask yourself a few questions first to see what's going to make most sense for you. One, how much additional money are we talking about? Second, what is the percentage difference in down payment? Next, how long do you plan on keeping the loan? And the last question is, will the difference in down payment affect maximum loan limits? 4 simple questions. Understanding or knowing the answer to those questions will determine the best strategy for you on using additional funds that you have for down payment versus using additional funds to buy down the interest rate. So let's start out with additional money example in buying down the interest rate. So if you have just a few $1,000s to work with, it always has a bigger impact if it's just based on that alone and not the other things we talked about, in utilizing that money for a buy down of interest rate versus down payment. Let's look at a $300,000 loan. I'm not quoting interest rates today. Interest rates are going to vary depending on what the market's trading at and also on qualifying factors. But for example purposes only, let's say a 30-year fix was running at 4.25. 3.25. We used to saw 3.25, not anymore. We're going to see 5.25 and 6.25 if you don't act quickly. But whole nother topic. 4.25% interest rate on a principal and interest loan, $300,000 loan amount would be $1,475, just rounding that. So if you paid a point, which would be $3,000 based on a $300,000 loan amount, you could actually get a 0.25% better interest rate at a 4% interest rate. So the principal and interest would drop down to $1,430, rounding those numbers. So you're going to save $45 a month between a 4.25% and a 4% interest rate on a $300,000 loan, costing $3,000. So the extra $3,000 in down payment would only save you $15 a month. So if you had the same 4.25% rate and you didn't buy it down, you're having a $15 a month savings versus a $45. So the spread is $30 a month. So to answer your question in this scenario, the better option would be to buy down the interest rate rather than putting it towards the down payment. And if you actually use that $30 to apply towards principal, it's going to knock off maybe 11 months in the term of your loan. Even a bigger benefit is just your buying potential, because the biggest challenge out there for buyers, it doesn't matter if you're first time, second time, or buying your dream home. Everybody has an objective and a payment, and it doesn't quite match up with what your target price is. So buying potential is key. This will give you another $5,000 in buying potential if you strategize correctly with what you want to do with your money. Now, the second factor to look at, which would change this answer, would be your down payment. So if the additional cash that you have is going to take you from a 3.5% down payment up to a 5% down payment, you will want to utilize it for a down payment, not to buy down the interest rate. The reason why is because the impact in payment is going to be substantially more, because it's going to put you in a position to where you can utilize conventional financing versus utilizing FHA financing. Huge difference is your mortgage insurance. So the cost of mortgage insurance monthly is going to be dramatically more expensive on an FHA loan. Actually, it's $120 a month on a $300,000 loan. Also, on conventional, you can release that mortgage insurance based on future appreciation in your property, whereas FHA, that mortgage insurance, that's $120 a month higher for the life of the loan. So really important to look at what your options are so you're not making the wrong financial decision. A third factor to look at is how long you're planning on holding the loan. If you're not going to hold the loan for at least 5 years, buying down the interest rate is not going to be the best option. Go ahead and apply it towards down payment, even though the payment's going to be a little bit less in a difference, just because you're not having enough time to recover that money. So you've got to look at the amortization schedule and see where your break-even point is. The last difference is to take in consideration is what it's going to do for your loan amount. So there's different maximum loan limits that are going to allow better interest rates and better qualifying factors. So if you're able to keep your loan within conforming limits by putting that money towards the down payment, that's going to be the best option rather than not doing that and having to go into a non-conforming or a jumbo product. So again, what's most important for me is to be able to educate you and give you a little bit of teasers, because you can't get all of this information, especially without a visual and in a 5-minute segment on my Money Chat. But hopefully it sparks some interest and some questions that you have. And most important, what I hope that you get out of it is just knowing that there's a lot of different options to choose from. It's just understanding that you want to analyze those. And the numbers don't lie. It's really nice to see them side by side so you can see what makes most financial decision for you. And coming up next on the Money Hour, here to discuss with me today's real estate market, Paul Fennell and Daniel Renne with Flux Real Estate, right here on 1150 AM KKNW after this short break.
Introducing the YMCA. What, you already know the why? Or so you think. Sure, you know the why for a swim, a workout, even a game of hoops. But did you know we're more than that? We're a cause. When you take your jump shot at the Y, someone else is getting job training. Take a cardio class, while kids are in an after-school enrichment program. Practice your downward-facing dog as a teen practices her leadership skills. That's the why. We work with people no matter their age, income, or background and give them the opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive, all with one simple goal in mind, to strengthen our community. And we've got so much more that does just that. So while you might think of the Y as that place for lifting weights, we're also about lifting entire communities. Introducing the Y. We're so much more than a place. We're a cause. Visit ymca.net/more.
This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, May 31st show. bringing in expert advice and inside knowledge on today's events in our local economy and how they can affect your money. If you're hearing my show on a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast, but we are here to assist with any questions that you have, and I can connect you with any of the amazing guests that I have in studio today. Please call into the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. And in studio right now, Paul Fennell and Daniel Renne with Flux Real Estate, here to discuss what's happening in today's real estate market and how consumers are reacting to the current environment. Daniel and Paul, thanks for coming back into studio.
Thanks, Tina. How are you?
Wonderful. It's been a little while since you guys have been able to make time in your busy schedule to come in, and I just appreciate all the expert advice and all the assistance that you give to our buyers and sellers in this market.
Excellent. Happy to be here.
And a little bit about Paul and Daniel. Paul began his real estate career 16 years ago as a buyer's representative. He started presenting real estate seminars in the Puget Sound area and averaged 5 seminars per month over a 7-year span. Paul started to train buyers, agents, and became the sales manager of a team that grew to 14 agents. At this time, he began to work on the listing side of the transactions, working with sellers to get the most money for their homes. The team averaged over monthly sales volume of $10 million a month in total home sales. And this is a tremendous amount of real estate under his belt, which makes a huge difference, especially in this environment right now, to have that expertise and that knowledge of having so many transactions. Daniel has held a full-time career in real estate for the last 8 years, from hosting seller seminars to new construction site sales and to flipping bank-owned and auction properties. Daniel has conquered many facets of the real estate industry. Again, I'm just really excited to have you guys in studio and talk a little bit about what's happening in the real estate market. So right now, if you're looking at buying a home and making an offer on a property, and let's talk a couple minutes about open houses. So you go into the open houses and business cards that are there. What does that mean? Let's say that there's a lot of them. What's happening?
That means there's a lot of showings. What we're really seeing now is a lot of activity that starts online. So consumers are going to different sites, utilizing the tools that link to the Northwest Multiple, which is where all agents have their listings and access. And then they're calling up their agents for representation, and the agents a lot of times are sending them out to these open houses, which, I mean, we've seen couple hundred people in a 4-hour span, especially on the east side.
Are you serious? 200 people that go through an open house on a weekend?
Yes.
Unbelievable. So what if you're not seeing cards in there? You go into an open house and there's nothing in there. Does that mean that house is not getting showings? What's going on there?
Generally speaking, that would be the case, yes. So first things first, it's important to note, though, that with any kind of bank-owned homes, things like that, if you're just on a regular showing and you see there aren't many cards at a bank-owned home, a lot of agents don't leave cards at bank-owned homes because the card is really more of a courtesy for the seller to let someone know they were in the home. So one thing to know is that'll be the case. But when it comes to the traditional homes, basically you'll see even sometimes agents will actually purposely put cards there that didn't even exist.
No way.
Really.
That's actually kind of a good strategy.
I've actually come into homes showing them to my clients, and I've seen my business card there. And I'm like, how did my business card get there if I've never shown this home? Because some agents are actually staging business cards to make the idea that it's actually busier than it should be.
That's terrible.
Yeah, well, it's
but
business.
I guess you're working for the seller. You want to get as much action going on as you can. So let's talk about bank owned versus traditional, where an actual seller versus a bank being the seller. What's the difference in that, and what's the process difference?
Sure. Well, from a traditional sales standpoint, a seller is going to be definitely interested in the emotional aspect of selling a home. You know, I raised my kids there. We've lived there for a number of years. Certain things have happened. But they also certainly do have the get the most money concept going. And that difference really is the emotional parts taken out when you deal with a bank-owned property. It's all about the numbers for a bank. And so, you run into a lot of buyers that want to try to write a nice letter explaining that, they have 2 kids, they've lived in the area for a number of years, their relatives live down the street, and banks really, honestly, are looking for the bottom line.
Makes total sense. So when consumers are feeling, buyers feel that they're just getting awesome deals on banks, is there any rhyme or reason to that? And all in some fashion, they're not because of this reason, or what are you seeing?
With the bank-owned homes, it's always important to understand that the bank prices the home according to the information that was given to them through local agents via a report called a BPO, a broker price opinion. And the bank gathers these reports. It can be 3, 6. It just depends on whatever bank they're using. And from these reports, that's how the bank determines the price. Now, that means that their information is only as good as what was given to them. So just because it's a bank-owned home does not guarantee a deal by any stretch of the imagination. Banks definitely do want to take the home off the books and give a deal to just get it out as soon as they possibly can, but it doesn't guarantee a deal. I'd say the most important attribute about the bank-owned versus the traditional home is just that it's very important to understand the home is sold as is. This does not mean you're not going to have an inspection. It's very important. People kind of freak out about that. It doesn't mean you're going to have an inspection. It just means that once you have the inspection, if you find something you don't like, it's just either you take it or you don't. But I have seen some instances, particularly if buyers are using FHA financing, where if the home only has a few minor items that are required to be fixed or repaired so that it can meet those FHA standards, we have seen banks put a little bit, more into the home process to make it sell, because the idea is that whether it's your buyer or our buyer or some other buyer, if they're using FHA financing, it's a requirement regardless of the buyer, so they may as well get it done. Got it.
And are you seeing a different because I know on the traditional sale, right now in a multiple offer situation, if you've got an FHA and you've got a conventional buyer, everything's equal. They're going to choose the conventional buyer, which is it's sad that you don't have the same program options as you did before. You really have to think about how you're going to be presenting that to the seller. So are you seeing that the same on the bank side, that they care as much, or do they care more in the strength based on the actual financing they're using?
I would certainly say it depends on the property.
Okay.
For instance, there's one I saw just this last week that certainly needed a rehab type of loan, and the bank actually only had one offer, and they went ahead and they took an FHA standard non-rehab loan.
Okay,
which was kind of shocking to me, but certainly if I think it were a multiple offer situation and it was an FHA pitted against a conventional buyer, you had 2 total offers, the bank probably is going to lean towards the conventional just because of the appraiser not being as strict in that that aspect.
Okay. And what are you guys getting with your buyers that you're working with right now? Because you guys work with a lot of them and you're helping a lot of people in our local market get into homes. What are you feeling from them and the communication that they're having in regards to price? Are there concerns that people are feeling that they're being forced to overpay for a home, or with all this frenzy and everything that's going on, what from the buyer's standpoint, what are you hearing?
Well, basically, when it comes to making an offer on a home, before an offer is even made, and there's obviously a long process that happens before that point to make sure we're showing homes that are quality, that are going to be comfortable for their monthly payment, et cetera. But when it comes to making an offer on a home, the first thing we do is, upon the decision being made, is we run comparables. The same way if we were to be listing your home and putting it on the marketplace, we would take a look at the active homes that are on the marketplace. We look at the ones that have sold, et cetera, and get a feel for fair market value of the home. And one of the things that's kind of a tough pill for some people to swallow is again, market value of a home. Not assessed value, not appraised value, but market value.
Well, assessed value is typically a year behind somewhere on that, maybe even longer.
Very much so. Very much so, and it's great in an appreciating market because your taxes are lower. But the bottom line is market value is what a buyer and seller are willing to agree a home is worth, and that's so vague. So there can be a little bit of gray area, but it's a combination of what is sold, what's active, and then what's specifically going on in that local marketplace, statistically speaking. And from there, we can get a range of value, and then the question is simply, what's it worth to you?
Sure.
Obviously, I've had clients in the past who have paid, my opinion, more than the home should be paid, but it's because, they were just having kids, their mother lived 2 blocks away, that type of convenience is great. But when that home sells, it sets the new bar for the market, and therefore the prices go up and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
And that's why it's so important that you work with an established realtor that understands really what's happening out in the market, because these are the conversations you need to have, because just like Daniel said, you may want that home and it's okay that you're paying a little bit more because it is the right home and you can't find anything else out there. You want to know where the cap is going to be, and these multiple offer things get really, really crazy. So again, if you want expert advice and expert representation pick up the phone, give my show a call, 1-855-400-1150. Again, 1-855-400-1150. If you're listening to the show on Saturday, we are here. If you're listening to the show on Sunday, it's a rebroadcast, but definitely we'll connect you with Paul and Daniel. So let's talk about multiple offer situations. So some of these homes out there are getting what's on a high end in multiple offers?
Lately, I've seen 19.
Yeah. I was gonna say I heard like around 20. It's like crazy. Mm-hmm. So in that multiple offer situation, what's something that they can do to stand out?
Well, there's quite a few things, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. The immediate things we go to, Daniel had mentioned about getting an inspection. A fair amount of sellers will allow you to do a pre-inspection on the property, and that's a big one because sellers don't always know what is going on internally in their homes, underneath the crawl space, in the attic, how's my roof, that sort of thing. And so by having that done prior to writing an offer as a buyer, you can get a real feel on what is going on in the home, and is that something you're willing to take on yourself? Okay. And then what you would do on contract is just not make it contingent upon a home inspection. So that's one pretty aggressive way of doing it.
So would that be your biggest tip that you would have, Paul?
I would say that's one of them. Another one that we always like to tug at the emotional shoestrings of people, but writing a cover letter for the buyer. As I had mentioned before, 2 kids. We've been in the neighborhood X amount of years, that sort of thing. We, 5 minutes from work. Anything that you can do to really appeal to the emotional side. Now, keep in mind, again, that's for traditional listings for traditional buyers. Banks don't care as much, but it's worth a try. Certainly shortening your contingencies. You have a contingency involved of neighborhood review potentially. You have finance contingencies that you can speak to, Tina, how those work. and there's a few other things that would really work when it comes to strengthening your offer.
So what are you guys doing with the finance contingency? Because I know there's a lot of crazy stuff going on out there. And I actually talked last week in the importance during my money chat that you've got to work with a lender that's going through the underwriting process and getting that signed off and make sure that it's taken care of. But the reality of it is employment's getting rechecked, assets get rechecked, and everything gets updated based on that time and clothesline. So you've got to just make sure that you're not going to lose your job or something's going to happen that's out of your control. But what are you seeing if you had to say in our market with these proms that have 20 offers on them, what's the percentage of people that are waiving finance contingency?
Not as high as I think one would think. It's much more commonplace to waive inspection than it is to waive financing. Okay. And one thing to note as well on the side is that financing contingencies basically are only waived if they're challenged. And I want to make sure I'm kind of clear about this. There's a certain time frame that we have the seller give us before they can challenge our financing. So the default would be 30 days. Yep. In which case, if we write an offer and we're going through the process, they cannot challenge our financing or where we're at in our financing until that 30-day period. So to make our offer stronger, we are taking that timeline down to say like 15 days. Okay. And basically that would more or less mean they could challenge us in our financing through the Form 22AR, and then from there, we would have to prove that we're still willing to move forward with the home, that everything is good and looking fine. I've never, in my almost 10 years of doing real estate now, I've never been challenged on that. The financing contingency usually lasts the entire length of the contract because it's only waived if it's challenged. It's never been challenged, more often than not.
So what are you guys seeing with the appraisal and adding in addendum in there that they're willing to pay the extra on the appraisal, but up to an amount if for some reason the appraisal did come in low in these multiple offers? Are you seeing that happening out there?
That is another way to go about strengthening your offer. It is challenging when you're dealing with a 3.5% down buyer who needs the closing costs paid by the seller and has no additional funds. Yes. So, from our standpoint, what we've dealt with is we've done it a few times. Did it make the difference? It possibly did, but I really think there's some other angles because that, what if the appraisal comes in at a lot higher amount and you don't know, you might be borderline on the amount of cash needed that the buyer needs to bring in.
Yes. You mean the appraisal lower than what the price is?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So if you're going in there and you're saying that you're going to come in with whatever the appraised value is within a max amount, yes, you have to be prepared to have that cash. So we're getting close to the end of our segment. What else do you want to share with our listeners?
I guess one of the biggest things we have and concerned with the the multiple offer scenario is everybody's going to question, well, will I ever know what the other offers were?
And what do you say, Daniel?
Generally speaking, only if you win will you know the last offer that you beat.
Okay.
Other than that, you write an offer where if you win the home, you're not kicking yourself later thinking, oh, man, I think I overpaid. And you write the offer where if you don't get the home, you're not kicking yourself thinking, gosh, I wish I should have done more. But that's an emotional thing that depends on the information that's available to you, and that's where expertise is really important.
Makes total sense. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming into studio and sharing with my listeners.
Thank you so much.
Tina.
Okay. Coming up next in the Money Hour, it's all about the skill of negotiation, how important today's real estate market is everything. Aaron Peterson with Windermere Real Estate right here on 1150 AM KKNW after this short break.
Has your bank or lending professional turned you down? Have you felt that your lender just doesn't understand you or your project? Do you wish there was a lender that wouldn't beat you up for your credit history and actually look at the project, collateral, and exit strategy instead? Scott Estes and Veristone Capital are helping real estate agents, loan originators, financial planners, buyers, and real estate investors find lending solutions in today's turbulent and ever-changing market. We take pride in saying yes when others say no and seeing your project come to life. We offer a personalized pro forma that will lay your project out and offer full transparency with zero commitment or costs on your part. Scott Estes and Veristone Capital are bringing Make Sense loans back to lending and put more weight into collateral and exit strategy than credit risk of the borrower.
This is Scott Estes with Veristone Capital in Kirkland, Washington. To learn more about our lending programs and unique solutions, or to get your personalized pro forma of your next project, you can contact me at 425-891-8260. Again, that's 425-891-8260, or email me directly at scott@estesteam.com.
This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Tina Mitchell right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, May 31st show. It's great to talk to you about money. That's why I'm here with you, and is what the show is all about, how to make money, save money, and build a better quality of life for yourself and for your family. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast, but we are here to answer any questions or connect you with any guests that I have in studio today. Please call into the show, 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150, or online at themoneyhour.com. And in studio, Aaron Peterson with Windermere Real Estate. If you're a seller, you'll probably be looking for ways to maximize your potential profits. And if you're a buyer, you need to know what the seller's strategies are, so maybe you can pay a little bit less for that home. And Aaron, just excited to have you back in studio. Thank you so much.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
A little bit about Aaron. Aaron is a designated broker with Windermere Real Estate in the Renton area and has 18 years specializing in real estate in the greater Seattle area. He is an educator and a trainer specializing in the Windermere Ninja program. And I hear agents talk about the Windermere Ninja program all the time. Quite an intense training process to go through.
It is. And
contract review specialist. He also has experience in land development and assessing opportunity. So, Aaron, let's go ahead and just start out with maximizing profit. When the sellers, I think sometimes sellers are... well, I know a lot of times, because I hear it coming from people that are selling their home, is it's just a crazy market. We're going to get tons of buyers and we don't really need to do anything. We're going to get top dollar. And the reality of it is you actually could do worse in a percentage of what the opportunity you have in this environment than you could in an environment when there's no buyers, because when there's no buyers, you're actually trying to think of things to do. Mm-hmm. And in this market, the sellers are getting lazy and think they don't have to. Is that your experience?
I think in some ways that's true for sure.
Uh-huh.
I think there's a lot of things starting from the very beginning and the expectations that the listing agent sets, both for the seller and then for the people that are coming to hopefully put offers together on the property. You get initially... you have your meeting and figure out what the price is for the home. Okay. And then after that, you've got to figure out what are the terms you're going to accept, what kind of people are you looking for, and how much time are you going to allow the home to be shown prior to actually looking at offers and so on and so forth. So I'm seeing a lot of times in the city especially where the home will go on the market and there's a week for people to conduct pre-inspections, decide what they need to do in order to get themselves positioned properly, and then they'll look at the offers and make a decision at that point.
Makes total sense. And I just actually heard an attorney that was talking in your arena, Justin. You're probably familiar with him. I won't mention his last name in studio, but does a lot of education and keeps you guys up to date in what's happening legal and on the legal side. And he had made a comment which I wasn't familiar with, and I forgot what his term was, and that there's enough time to allow people to actually come make an offer. So if you're listening and you're a seller and you've got somebody that's ready to come and pay cash for your property and they're willing to pay your price, they knock on your door and they're paying right then as soon as they see the house. You need some time to expose that home to the buyers, right?
Right. There's a lot of different elements to that because once the home is exposed to the market, you're actually getting market value, quote unquote. The MLS has also made some changes, and there's different ways that they will allow a seller to sell the home. So, for instance, they can list the home and they've got up to 30 days to actually wait until they actually put it on the market. So you can have it listed with some dead time to get things positioned, get some repairs done, do whatever you think you need to do. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And then if the seller actually procures the buyer on their own, there's a separate form for that. So it never actually hits the market. But they're also acknowledging that they don't have that market time and that exposure. So they're comfortable with that.
And would you advise a seller to do that in this environment?
It wouldn't probably maximize your profit if there's somebody that needs to get moved quickly, or if there's somebody that just doesn't want to have to deal with people tromping through their home, then it actually works for them. They might be willing to sacrifice a little profit.
They might be in process to close on their new home and they've got to sell really quickly and they got the buyer.
Exactly.
Makes total sense. So, Aaron, what type of different strategy would you have on the listing side and representing a seller in this environment versus in a little more balanced environment?
Well, I think that it's important to just take your time. It's easy to get into a hurry. It's really easy to try to have a buyer or a buyer's agent come and motivate you and try to get you to move faster than you really want to. And under those circumstances, you probably will cost yourself money. But I think that it is all about setting the expectations early in all different aspects of the sale.
Makes total sense. What about pricing strategy? I mean, can people price their home too much in this environment like they can in a normal environment?
Absolutely. I've actually been looking at a lot of homes in Ballard recently, and typically they'll sell in a couple of days. And if you had it actually where you look at offers the next day, it would be gone. Yeah. I've also seen some where they sit for a month and you can't understand it. It doesn't seem like it's that far off. But once you overprice something, you've got to compensate exponentially the wrong way to get the price.
Makes total sense. So you really have to listen to your real estate representation and hope that you're working one that is using the right strategies and not listening just to what you want as a seller, because there's so many times that you hear this is the seller and what I need and what I think my home's worth. You've got to listen to the experience of your representation.
Absolutely. There's a lot of I need this, I need that, but when it comes down to it, the market's going to tell you what you need.
Makes total sense. So what's most important and the most valuable marketing thing that you can give advice to for a seller?
For a seller, the most important thing, I think, is to be realistic about where you price the home. Everything else, people will write the letters in order to put an offer together and try to differentiate themselves. But ultimately, it's being realistic about your price. And if you price it a little bit low, the market will tell you that too.
Sure.
It's not going to just change because you priced it the wrong way one way or the other.
Couldn't that be a good strategy in a good neighborhood? Price it, because I always say, if you're looking, I'm just imagining myself, I'm on the computer looking online at properties, which everybody does, right? And you've got a search criteria and you see one house that stands out because it's a little bit less expensive. I would think that would be a good strategy. Maybe list a little bit less expensive and get those multiple offers coming in.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that because of the way the last few years have been, and people have been really having a hard time getting to the equitable position in some cases, they're a little bit scared about listing low.
Yes.
But the reality is it's fine. It'll get you where you need to be in the end anyhow.
So give a tip as a trainer and a broker and really educating realtors on what they should be doing, because there's the 80-20 rule, and I always say I think it's a 90-10 rule. I mean, 10% are doing 90% of the business. But
I agree.
let's say give it the benefit of the doubt and say 20% is doing 80% of the business. You want to be working with those quality agents. So what should they be expecting from their agent as a seller? What do you see might be missing out there with the 20%, the 80% that are only doing 20% of the business, which is a lot of the realtors out there. They just are not doing enough business.
Yeah, I think that they're missing. I mean, the experience is a huge part of it, and you just can't substitute experience. I think that they're missing on the relationships part as well, because when you have an agent that's experienced, they're going to know the other agents that are going to sell that house already. So I think you miss out. That's probably the biggest thing you miss out.
So you're talking, if you're a buyer, if you're a buyer and you're working with a realtor that does not have experience in our local market, and if you're working with a realtor that has bad experience, then you're really in trouble. In this multiple offer situation, the agent that's representing the seller, they want to get an offer together that's going to be clean and actually make it through to closing. And I can't remember what the percentage. I remember reading something about 30%. Give or take, financing falls through during the closing process. So these statistics are known, and an agent wants to find the best quality, and that buyer's agent that represents the buyer is a big part of that. So it's important.
Right.
So how do you find that out? How do you find out as a buyer if my agent is experienced in my local market?
There's a lot of different ways. I think a lot of it is who do you know in that area that's used an agent previously, and they're going to be able to have a pretty good idea of some of the people that work that market.
Okay.
There's actually some sites now that are a lot more open about information as to who's done what business where. And you can see how they've actually conducted their business and what they've done over the last year or so.
Makes total sense. Would you ever advise, could a client call in your office and go, hey, who are your top agents over there at Windermere? I'm looking to shop for a realtor.
I would, but I would probably go for a personal referral rather than do that.
Makes total sense. So let's talk about the importance of holding open houses. Do you think as a seller that's important in this environment, and or not?
I think typically open houses are more for an agent to show that they're working, and it doesn't necessarily generate that buyer you're looking for. I think that, it's an agent trying to find new customers. It's an agent trying to show they're working hard for the seller. But in the reality is, I don't think that it's going to find you your seller. They're going to be seeing it through their agent somewhere else. Okay, makes sense. And what about contingencies, Aaron? What's your take on it, and what do you see that's happening that is creative and really helping people through this process? Or I guess as a seller, since we're kind of focusing with sellers with you, what should they be expecting from their buyers in a multiple offer situation? Well, the buyers in a multiple offer situation, if they have contingencies in place, they are probably not being very realistic about where they're going to end up. Because I've actually been in a couple of multiple offer situations where the offers come in with zero contingencies. Somebody may even be trying to get a loan, but they'll still waive that financing contingency. If you can shorten them up, just like they talked about a little bit earlier, then that's the best way to handle it. And I always tell people earnest money is a big thing in the quality of, the amount of earnest money that you put down. And I just found out recently that really 5% is capped because there's I'm learning all kinds of little legal sides of your guys' industry, but I didn't realize that. So anyways, but if you come in with a really strong earnest money, it's going to help set you aside. What about timelines? What are you seeing that in the timelines, and what's important about that? As far as typical timelines for contingencies? Well, a typical inspection contingency is 10 days, where a finance contingency will be 30 days. And also they discussed earlier that does survive till closing unless the seller asks them to remove that contingency. Those are the two main ones. The title contingency is usually 5 days, but the seller has an opportunity to fix any of those kinds of defects. So overall, the reality is you're looking at about a 10-day window where everything is going to either make it or break it. Sure. And I know that you guys have a special addendum that you have regarding for the appraisal. And we talked earlier about the appraisal, and I think that's a big thing right now. And really, it's just you've got to find out what's comfortable for you and what you're willing to pay for that home. But and a value of a home is what people are willing to pay for it. Right. But there's that gray area. So sometimes it can get challenging for an appraiser, even though they have
these multiple offers that are supporting this value. So I know, Windermere has an addendum that you can waive up to that maximum amount of what you're willing to pay over and above what the appraisal comes in short at. So an example would be you're making an offer on a house that's listed for $500,000 and it gets bid up with escalation clauses to $600,000 and you win the deal as the buyer. So it's gone over $100,000, which that's not uncommon.
Not these days.
Especially in some of these neighborhoods in Seattle and in Bellevue. And so you've paid $100,000 more for the home. So in that situation, the seller might be nervous about that and whether or not they're going to take that offer. And if you're willing to pay up to, let's say the appraisal comes in at $550,000, so it's $50,000 less, you can add that addendum that states you're willing to pay up to $525,000. So that's 25 over. So you can put a limit to what that is and not completely waive the appraisal contingency is what I'm
That's correct.
trying
and
to
actually,
explain.
On the seller's behalf, they're going to want to also ask for evidence of funds to show that they can actually pay that.
Makes total
which is
sense.
a pretty good idea. And then the other thing is they just recently changed the financing addendum to where if you waive the finance contingency, you can either A, keep the appraisal contingency or B, not have the appraisal contingency anymore.
Makes sense.
So that's a change that's just a couple of weeks old.
So it's important to keep up to date, which you can't keep up to date, but you can surely work with a real estate expert that is up to date on all these constant changes in the environments in the market. I highly encourage just to pick up the phone, give my show a call, 1-855-400-1150. And I have an expert right here that can help and assist and answer your questions as a seller or a buyer. Aaron, thank you so much for coming back into studio. It was great having you here.
Thanks for having me back.
Coming up next in the Money Hour, buying a home at auction has a reputation for seat of your pants excitement, quick fire action, and potential great profits. You need to be prepared to pay cash for the property, and I'm excited to have Scott in studio, which is going to talk about how you can do this. Scott Estes with Veristone Capital right here on 1150 AM KKNW after this short break.
Hi, I'm Felix Hernandez, and I'm a baseball player.
And I'm Macklemore. I'm a musician.
We are pretty different.
But when it comes to taking the anti-bullying pledge, we're on the same team.
No one deserves to be bullied.
So join us in our promise to stay positive, be kind to each other, and make our schools
a place everyone feels at home.
Together, we can change the game. Sign the pledge at mariners.com/change the game.
This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, May 31st show. I'm here to help you build a strong financial blueprint 1 week and one show at a time. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast, but we're here to assist with any questions that you have, and also I can connect you with any of the amazing guests that I have in studio today. Please call into the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. In studio right now, Scott Estes with Veristone Capital. The traditional real estate market isn't the only place that you can conduct a home search. Auctions also bring many buying opportunities, and private lenders are a key component to making that work. It's your short-term financing that gives you the resources to go in and buy the home cash at auction. And that's why I have Scott here to share his expertise in this arena. Scott, thank you so much for coming back in studio.
Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
And a little background on Scott. Scott is a private money expert at Veristone Capital in Kirkland. They are a full-service real estate lending partner that lends private money for opportunist investors on single-family and residential and commercial properties in the greater Puget Sound area. They help investors get in front of an opportunity and offer unparalleled services from start to finish. If you are a real estate investor buying a property off the MLS at auction, needing a bridge loan, refinancing, or want their all-in-one fix and flip loan, you can't afford not to pick up the phone and give Scott a call or his team at Veristone Capital. Scott, again, thank you for coming in. Excited about this topic. And I think in this arena, it might actually be great to get a little bit more creative and get out of the rat race that we're seeing in the market. And if you've been listening to the show today, we've talked everything regarding real estate and all the chaos that's going on out there. So maybe stepping over to the auction block might be a good creative thing to do.
Absolutely. This is a totally different shift from where this show has been so far. Your listeners for owner-occupied and move-up buyers, they're getting so much good information from you guys, and you're absolutely the lender to go to. But there's a different arena, and that's private money.
Yep.
You know, and that's where you're going to find houses at auction, and that's what seems to pique people's interest right now, where they think they can get a good deal off the market. And so we can help you, find the property, analyze it, acquire and save on distressed properties. We'll fund and buy it at the auction for you, and even help you quickly market and sell the finished product. So we offer like detailed condition reports with pictures, professional representation at each. I have guys at each auction every single week. So we're able to help you. We've got notes on properties, so it's a really great way for people, for investors looking to swing a hammer that want to find distressed properties. This is not move-in ready. This is not your first-time home buyer, or these are investors.
So your perfect client would be somebody, an investor, whether they're going to keep and hold as a rental or if they're going to flip it and try to get some quick cash.
Exactly, and that's where we talk strategy, right? Because I'm looking at the property, I'm looking at the exit strategy.
Sure.
And so if somebody comes to me and they say that they want to fix and then hold the property, well, that's where we need to make sure that Tina's got the financing down straight so that you can refinance them out of it as fast as possible.
Makes total sense.
Some people get caught up because they'll buy the house with cash and then they try to get a loan from you, but you're going to need 6 months or 12 months title seasoning depending on what type of property it is. And so now they've locked up all their cash.
So there's really a strategy to make sure that you're covering in all bases.
Time.
So what other client would be good, Scott, that would be using private money? Is that mainly?
I've got so many different kind of clients. I've got clients that are investors that are really, really savvy. I've got first-time investors that finally have some cash and they want to start playing in that arena.
Got it.
I've got loan officers where they're my clients. They bring me deals that they know they can't fund, and I help them figure out the best strategy for that. I work with real estate agents like the ones that you've heard so far.
Yep.
They always have clients that they need to phone a friend when they're conventional lender just can't work, right?
Makes total sense.
Let's say you're finding a property that's on the market, it might not be habitable. And until you get your appraisal, you might not know that. And now they're, a week or 2 or 3 weeks into this process, and now it turns out that you can't lend on that property.
Makes total sense. I like phone a friend. That's great. So when somebody's in trouble, they can pick up the phone and phone a friend.
And that's me. I'm their phone a friend. I make a very
I'm sure
good
a
phone
lot of people would say that about you, Scott. Let's talk about single family and commercial money.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Single family, any kind of single family, whether it's a 1-unit, 2-unit, multifamily. Again, I'm looking at the property itself.
Okay.
So if you've got a single family and you want to fix and flip the property, I've got an all-in-one exclusive loan where you can, what's awesome about us is that we're going to make you a cash buyer, because what I heard earlier was, 19 offers on the table. How do you differentiate yourself? And in my head, I'm thinking, gosh, if these guys were just my clients, they wouldn't have that problem, because I'm the guy that's offering all cash. I know the area, and at the same time, our client can use us. So we're going to buy the house. Let's say it's $200,000 and it needs $50,000 in remodel costs. I'll require maybe 15 to 25% of the whole of the $250,000.
Yep.
So let's say they bring $50,000 in. That gets them the property and builds them in the remodel costs all in one.
Okay.
Whereas if they went conventional, they would need 25% down plus the $50,000 of their own money. Now they're into it for $100,000. So I can take that same borrower and do 2 projects now.
Yep.
And get them a better ROI on that money.
So what is the cost? Let's say somebody was using this for just a really short term to go in and be a cash buyer. What is the cost to them up front to get that Well, let's use 500,000 because in this market, where are we going to find a $200,000 home, right?
Depends. I just got one in Buckley and Mount Vernon.
Buckley.
So
Okay. Maybe in Buckley. Okay, up north. There you go. There you go. So, what kind of upfront cost is there?
There's no upfront cost. You can call me, and there's zero cost. My whole goal is just to be that phone a friend, figure out where you're at.
Well, not upfront there. So your process is a consultation at no cost.
No
but if
cost.
they were going to use the short-term financing to purchase the home
There's
cash,
a cost,
so what is that cost?
It varies because just like your thumbprint, your scenarios are all different, right?
Yes.
So it depends on if you just need it for an auction where you're gonna, you're gonna use our money and then you're gonna refinance out of it within 30 days. That could be maybe 2 points, 12% interest. And again, I don't have a cookie cutter approach. What I'm looking for is how much down are you putting? If you're asking for the minimum down, then it might be a standard 2 and 12 or 4 and 12.
Got it.
As far as 4 meaning the percentage on the loan amount, and then the 12 is on the interest rate, which is interest only.
Makes
12%.
total sense. So really, you need to pick up the phone, give the show a call. My show number is 1-855-400-1150. Again, it's 1-855-400-1150, and you can talk directly with Scott, or you can reach us online at themoneyhour.com. So, Scott, let's talk about a good time to pick up the phone and call. And I want to know the answer right now. If you're thinking that you have any interest in this, you need to pick up the phone and call. But is that your strategy? What they should be doing?
It's sad because I'm recently the last resort lately.
I know.
And had they been the first phone call,
Yep.
they would have been in completely different situations.
Yes.
And it breaks my heart to have to come in and tell these people that, had they used my money in the beginning, none of this would be a problem.
Makes total sense.
And so we come in, and try to do the best I can. But my ideal person is ahead of this opportunity. It's really easy with me to get pre-approved. It's a couple pieces of paper. I need to know where the money's coming from. And then really it's the collateral, the property, and then the exit strategy.
So property is a bigger deal than the actual borrower and their qualification themselves.
Exactly.
So, Scott, where do you guys lend at?
Washington.
Anywhere in Washington?
Correct. We're moving into Oregon.
All right.
And so, traditionally it's the Pacific, Northwest.
Yep. Okay. So how does it work? Give a quick overview and kind of the steps and how it works.
It's great. First thing is they call me.
Okay.
And then we figure out what they're going to do. Because it might be an auction, a fix and flip, or a bridge. Those are pretty much the three ways people come in.
And a bridge, explain to my listeners a bridge.
A bridge is where you're trying to buy this new property and your house hasn't sold yet.
Yep.
And all your money's in that house, or a good chunk of it that you were going to use. And so I can bridge that gap where I'll lend you the money, I'll put a lien against that property, and as soon as it sells, I'm paid off. But you got into this house now that you really, really want, instead of waiting for that to
and
sell.
I know there's got to be people out there that are in that situation to where you can't go in now. It's a competitive market. You can't go in subject to, contingent or subject to your house selling. Your offer's not going to get accepted unless you're in some out of nowhere area to where they don't have these multiple offers. Exactly. So you've got to go in and be prepared, and that's where that bridge financing. So go ahead, Scott. We talked about flip, bridge, auction. So they have the free consultation with you.
Yep.
Next step.
And then we'll walk them through getting pre-approved online.
Okay.
They'll fill out the pre-approval. Our processor will send them some information. Once they send that back, they're ready to go. And then we just need to figure out what property they want. And then that's when we'll have our valuation. We'll look at it. We'll figure out whether their exit strategy is dead on or if they're off. And then once if it's going to be a fix and flip, I just need to know what you're going to do to the property. If you're going to add square footage, you're going to add a bedroom. Are you just going to lipstick and rouge, right? This gives me and my team the ability to figure out if your exit strategy is rock solid, and then at that point, we're ready to lend. So I got a call Tuesday, right after Memorial Day, and this borrower is in tears that her loan isn't going to be able to close because their lender has dropped the ball, and they just can't get it done. And so this literally 4 days, right? And so they called me, and I just brought a check before I came in here for $155,000, so they'll close tomorrow, and everything is good.
That is awesome. So you are the friend to pick up the phone and call. If there's any scenario and situations, that's private money is really, that's what it's for. It's for out of the box, creative and different things. So Scott, I know why your company, because that's why I have you in studio, and I don't have anybody else that comes in and represents private money here on my show.
Thank you.
But tell my listeners what is unique about your company.
We've got a full-blown professional staff. We're full service from start to finish. We've never missed a funding. I can do loans from $100,000 to $2 million, and we portfolio most of it, but actually service 100% of it. And we're looking for long-term relationships. I would love. I helped one of your listeners just recently. He wrote me one of the best testimonials I've had in a long time. In 8 years of real estate investing, he just wished he met me sooner.
That is awesome.
And it's just changed the way that he's been able to work his business, because we're really a partnership together in this.
And so perfect for your investors that are just continuing to go out there and doing this. And that's what this long-term partnership is about. Get you your short-term money, to get your property, flip it, or do whatever you're going to do and start back over again. So if a listener wanted to call, is there anything that they should do prior to picking up the phone and calling?
Just pick up and call. We'll figure out where you're at, because it's really just finding out where they're at in that process. Sometimes it's the last resort, which is frantic and crazy, and other times it's hey, we're looking at 6 months from now. We want to buy a house, and they're very, very strategic about that.
Sure.
So I love talking to everybody, and it's when a loan has to close in 4 days that I'm my best. When everybody else is running out of the building, I run in and save the day.
I've known you for years, Scott, and that is just what is so awesome about you, is you've got that sense of urgency, that there is so much of that lacking in the industry, and you've got the sense of making things work and happen when I think a lot of people just get lazy and it doesn't feel like it's going to come together, so they just give up.
Right.
And in this business, there is a gray area, and you need somebody working on your side.
It's all on my hair.
That's funny, Scott. Plus, you're a funny guy. So pick up the show. Give the show a call. 1-855-400-1150. Scott, how else can I connect with you?
Just call me 425-891-8260.
Scott, thank you again so much for coming into studio and sharing your information on private money and just being available and accessible to my listeners. I so much appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You give the best advice.
Thanks, Scott.
Honored to be here.
This is your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell. I have to sign off for the day and say goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I will be here again, same time, same place, next Saturday as well, and our rebroadcast on Sunday. So if you missed the show today, if you're listening live, listen tomorrow. You can catch some of the pieces that you didn't hear. And I'm looking forward to hearing from all of my listeners, and happy to be here right here on 1150 AM KKNW.
The preceding program is paid for by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Pinnacle Capital Mortgage Corporation. Absolute Mortgage Company, NMLS number 81395 and Washington CL number 81395 is an equal opportunity housing lender. Tina Mitchell, MLO number 145420, is a licensed loan originator with Absolute Mortgage. Visit AbsoluteLoans.com or call 888-90-HOMES for cost information.